In order to help a customer develop a weight management plan for their animal, it's important to be able to determine the dog or cat's body condition score. A body condition score evaluates the amount of fat on the animal's body in multiple different areas based on a 5-point scale. Let's review some of the main areas you will be evaluating on the animal. The first will be their tummy area. You will be evaluating the shape and angle of their belly to see if it angles up, is flat, or more rounded. You will also be looking at the animal's ribs, spine, and hips to see how much definition there is, if any. The next place you will look is their waist area from above, right here. You will be looking to see how much this area indents or rounds. Alright, so let's take a look at a body condition score chart for a dog. Again, it's a 5-point scale. 1 will be the thinnest of animals and 5 will be the heaviest. So a 1 on the scale will be very skinny. Their ribs will have no fat cover and it will be very easy to see them as well as their hips and spine. They will have a dramatic abdominal and waist tuck. A number 2 will still have very little fat covering, but although you can still see many of the bones easily, there's going to be a slight fat covering to them. These dogs have an obvious tummy and waist tuck. A number 3's waist and belly will still tuck slightly, but they won't be as dramatic as a 1 or a 2. Their spine and hip area have filled in a bit, but the bones here are still easily palpated. When evaluating their ribs, you should be able to feel them easily without excess fat covering them. This is kind of a hard concept to explain, so let's do an exercise to illustrate what the ribs of a dog should feel like at a 3. With your hand relaxed, rub your fingers widthwise across the back of your hand. You should be able to feel your hand bones easily because of the lack of fat in this area. This is ideally how a dog's ribs should feel. So let's take a look at a dog that is a 4. They will have ribs that are hard to palpate through their fat covering. Their back and hind have noticeable fat deposits, and their abdominal and waist tucks are now filled in and look rather straight instead of angled in like the other dogs. The heaviest of dogs, at a 5 on the scale, have thick fat covering over their ribs, spine, and tail base. Their abdomen hangs down and their waist is now very rounded. I always think these dogs look a little bit like footstools. They're very square and have short legs. So the ideal score for a healthy dog on the body condition chart is a 2 to a 3. Now if we look at the cats on the body condition chart, we can see that the attributes will be the same as they were for dogs. So a cat that's a 1 will have very prominent ribs, spine, and pelvic bones. They have no discernible body fat and pretty much a complete lack of muscle mass. When looking at a cat that is a 2, we can see that they are still very thin with little fat. The same areas that were very bony on a 1 will still be easily palpable here and also still slightly visible. These cats also have an obvious abdominal and waist tuck. A cat that is a 3 still has a tucked abdomen, but all those bony areas have filled in more to be less visible, but they're still pretty easily palpable. And this includes the ribs. A cat that is a 4 will have a fleshier appearance. Their ribs are palpable with difficulty, and they have noticeable fat over their spine and rear. Their stomach no longer tucks up with the ribs, and their waist is already pretty rounded out at this point. And then we have the heaviest cats at a 5. These guys have fat deposits notable in most areas of their body, including their neck and legs. And then these are also the cats that have those pooches that hang down, that when they run or walk it kind of sways from side to side, and their waist is also completely absent. Just as with dogs, an ideal body condition score for a healthy cat is a 2 to a 3. So let's take another look at Luna and see if we can figure out what her body condition score would be. So taking a look at her from the side, you can see that her belly line goes up. Her abdomen doesn't overtuck with her ribs, but it's also not flat. If you look at her back, you can't really see her hip bones or her spine. It's pretty nicely filled in, but if you were to feel it, you could definitely feel those points on her. You would also be able to feel her ribs through her skin pretty easily, although you can't see them very well in this picture. So when looking at a body conditioning score from the side, this view of her, she would look mostly like a 3. Let's take a look at her from above also, to be sure, because we want to check all the areas. So taking a look at her waist, she has a nice waist here. It doesn't tuck in too far, and from the top you can see a little bit of rib definition, but it's not overly accentuated. So based on this as well, she looks like she would also be a 3. If you ever need further assistance in determining an animal's body condition score, you can always refer to the charts that you have in your store.